Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, following the 3H's of the channel, and in this video, it's all about the state of Oklahoma. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. This is something that happened back when I was a high school senior in Oklahoma with jack all to do. So my buddy sends me a text message asking if I want to go for a drive down the old dirt roads around town. I have nothing else to do, so I say, why not? Let's do it. My friend takes forever, as they often do, to show up, but when he finally does, I hop in and we take off. About half an hour out of town, I spot this old lighthouse still on. My friend tells me that it's for air traffic control, and it's just a remnant of an old Air Force base that used to be there. About 10 minutes later though, the whole sky is filled with the blue light from about 30 kilometers northeast of us. My friend and I have never seen anything like this, so we're a little bit confused, a little unnerved. There's only one flash, so we push it past our mind and we go back to probably talking about girls. Another 5 minutes go by, and the blue light reappears, scaring the hell out of us, even though it's the same distance out. My friend and I get filled with deep anxiety. We couldn't possibly think of what this could be. I take my phone out, and I start looking things up to see if this is something that other people are seeing, or if we're going full psycho. I can't find a single result about what we've been seeing, or any explanation. We're pretty nervous, but we're not panicked. My friend calls out while I keep frantically typing, "Hey man, look, there's a truck pulled over there." Now it's not entirely odd that a farmer could be out checking his property line, but it is almost 3 o'clock in the morning. So we pull up next to the truck and roll down the window. The lights are on, the doors are open. We scan the fields for anyone moving about. We see nothing. We start to get a little spooked. My friend says that we shouldn't dwell on this, and if we come back around and the truck's still there, then we can do something about it. So we speed off. We sit in silence. Not that far up the road is another car. We don't slow to a stop this time, because it's a cop car, but when we're passing by, we realize it's in the same situation. All the doors are open, the lights are on, and there's still no one for miles around. What's weird too is that 2 people seem to be missing, and there were 2 flashes of the same light. I don't know if they're related, but it still fills me with anxiety. I was visiting my dad in Oklahoma, the northeast section, around 2009. Both of us were out watching some kind of meteor shower. I forget now which one. The meteors were lighting up as red, blue, and green. It was really cool. And then out of nowhere, we see this orange light, about twice as large as a standard meteor. It makes its way up from the southern horizon. It's quickly apparent that it's not a meteor due to its size, its movement, and periodical wavy path as it moves north. Also, it hasn't burned out like literally every other meteor. Suddenly, 2 fighter jets come out from the west, possibly from the Tulsa Air Base. My dad and I collectively shit bricks as this thing splits in half, and both orange lights veer off in 2 separate paths. Both lights still head north, but begin moving much more erratically as the jets get closer. The lights cross overhead and begin to get closer to each other again. The jets are now barely keeping up. Suddenly, both lights maneuver and join together and then zip off east at an absolutely ungodly rate. There wasn't even a turn. It just instantly switched direction. The jets simply keep heading north. My dad and I immediately went inside, trying to make some sense of what we both had just saw. He tells me not to tell my mom, so she wouldn't get weirded out and try not to let me visit him anymore. I had a potential paranormal encounter years ago. The story might get a little long, but bear with me. So it was 2013, my senior year of high school. Me and my best friend are serial truants who typically leave school after lunch because both of us come from poor families and we need the school lunch to keep food in our stomachs. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so not rural at all, but there's patches of woods here and there. Me and my friend cut through one patch of woods to get to his house on the way home from school often. Nothing out of the ordinary, it's part of our daily lives. One day, on the way home, we noticed a tent popped up in the woods. There's homeless people that commonly set up camp around here in the woods, but we tend to avoid it because tweakers are actually dangerous. So one time, we actually got a look at the guy. He was in his 20s, covered in dirt. He probably hadn't showered in about a year. He wore a tie and a vest with no shirt. Dirty, raggy jeans that looked like they used to be blue jeans, but they were now more brownish. He didn't bother us the first time, just gave us a nod of acknowledgement. We nodded back, and we thought, okay, he's one of the ones that's not on drugs. So we head home to talk about it to all of our friends at school. One day, we go to smoke weed at a friend's house instead of going straight back to his place. We head home a lot later than usual. It's about 9 p.m. It's dark out. The woods are adjacent to a narrow street, so it isn't completely pitch black, but there are no lights until a car passes. No street lights either. Everything is under construction and has been for several years, so few cars come through this area. Me and my friend are walking home through our usual route. My friend complains of a terrible smell. He says it was like rotting meat. I had been a heavy smoker for about 3 years by this point, so my sense of smell was gone. I had to manually inhale through my nose pretty hard, and when I did, I just about threw up, like someone just gathered all the dead birds they could find and piled them up in one place and threw a dead skunk on top and then vomited on the pile. The smell was so bad that I literally got lightheaded. I had read lots of crazy stories on the internet when I was in high school, and when I smelled the rotten smell, a lot of alarms went off in my head. We start walking faster. We pass by the homeless guy's tent, and he lunges out of the tent and starts screaming for us to F off and get the hell away from him. His voice was really shaky, and he had been obviously crying. He was terrified. Before we started doubling over and just sobbing at our feet. You ever see that video of the teenage girl throwing a trash can and just screaming? Kinda like that, but a man's voice. He wasn't yelling specifically at us. He was just more screeching. My friend started to yell something back until I grabbed him and we bolted. Now, I'm pretty tall. Not fit, but I'm tall. I'm 6'8". My friend is 5'5", but he is jacked. So he was kinda heavy, but not enough to where my adrenaline couldn't wrap my arm around him halfway and just pick him up by the belt loop and make a run for it. He was really mad at first because he doesn't like being touched or handled and asked me what the hell my problem was. It was hard to explain that I was basically scared of stories I've read on the internet, so I just told him that I felt my fight or flight senses go off, which is not entirely untrue. So fast forward to the next day. We were out on the way home at the normal hour. I refused to go through the woods at night now. My friend laughs it up, calls me a pussy and all that because I'm 6'8" and I'm scared of the dark and a homeless guy. But we're walking through and the guy has been there again. He gives us a nod. My friend scowls at him, and I probably gave him an unnerved look, and he sensed that something was up. He actually jogged over to us and started talking to us. He asks us what's wrong. We explain last night to him, albeit kind of reluctantly. He looks shocked. He proceeds to tell us a story of how he's being scoped out or stalked by some kind of animal or something else. He says that it laughs like a hyena and growls like a big dog and likes to tear up his, quote, camping gear. And we didn't really believe him at first, but he showed us his backpack, and it had indeed been quite torn up by something. We basically shrug it off eventually. We make a couple werewolf jokes and crackhead jokes on the way home. So fast forward to the end of the year. By this point, we had gotten to know this homeless guy. We learned his name. He used to be a welder at a big place out in a neighboring town called Sapulpa, but he lost his job during the recession. He descended into alcoholism and got addicted to oxycodone until his wife and kid took off on him, and once the unemployment stopped coming through, he lost his apartment too. We felt kind of bad for him, but also kind of not, because we were teenagers, and teenagers are basically sociopaths. But me and my friend sometimes gave him cigarettes and just talked to him. I digress. It's the end of the year, and me and my friend are coming home from school. We pass through again. The smell is there again. My friend reacted immediately and looked at me. We went over to check the homeless guy's tent. We found it absolutely torn to ribbons. His bag, everything was strewn about. And worst of all, his blood. Or we assumed it was his blood. It was everywhere, splattered all across the nylon of his light blue tarp, on the ground and everything. And then we also noticed that there were trees in the area that were absolutely screwed up, splintered, some broken all the way down to the dirt, which was usually covered in dead leaves. There was mud upended and all over the place, signs of a massive struggle. I don't remember clearly anymore, but at the time, I seem to have think there was claw marks on the ground. Me and my friend freaked out and ran. We both couldn't bring ourselves to say anything, because at the time, we had more of a problem with the police. But a couple days later, someone else found it, and they called the police. My friend's mom was well aware of our habits and asked if we saw anyone out there, and we said no, and we were never asked about it again. Sorry for the over-detailed explanations and stuff like that, but I don't know. I have to wonder if his ex-wife and kid know about this. It kind of makes me sad now that I'm an adult, and it could have obviously been something like a coyote, but I can't stop thinking about how he described it, the rotting meat smell, not to mention that a lot of Oklahoma is native land, and a lot of just off-the-wall shit seems to happen out here. Whatever it was, I haven't encountered anything else of the paranormal category since then. Are there monsters in my town? Does anybody else from Oklahoma have any stories about paranormal encounters or other phenomenon they can't explain? When I was 16, I used to hang out with my best friend Dave and his girlfriend Catherine. These are not their real names, but their names are common enough anyways. Now during this stage, when they had got together, I was basically the third wheel, and I was the third wheel hard. But I was the only one in the friend group who had a car, so I usually ended up driving people around. Dave told me that he'll spot me for whatever gas I need for the next week, so I thought, alright, let's go. At first, we're just driving around, not knowing what to do or where to go. Kat pipes up and says that we should do some urbexing. I decide to go to Spencer because there's a handful of abandonments there. So we finally get there, and it's already sketchy because of the time of night. It's somewhere after dark, around 9 p.m. The town is very middle of nowhere boonies, farmland, with a single decrepit gas station in the area. There's tweakers everywhere, and their houses are all falling down. Kat mentions that she knows an abandoned house and the path to get there that we can take. She also mentions that we'll have to park somewhere on the trail so we won't be seen by the road. I think, what do you mean? Where are we going? I reluctantly park my car on this trail, hoping some meth head doesn't come along and try to break in. Dave is having little man syndrome. He's trying to be a super tough guy, telling Catherine how he'll beat up any person trying to mess with us. The dude is 5'6" and fat. He's never been in a confrontation in his whole life. We walk this path while getting all kinds of bugs on us, and it feels like we're lost. Kat is murmuring to herself, looking over her shoulder every few minutes, while Dave is oblivious with his inflated ego. We notice this baby doll that's nailed to a tree. I think, why did I have to get dragged into this? I ask if we're heading in the right direction. Nobody replies. I debate about dragging everybody back to the car and just leaving. But 5 minutes later, we find this house. We get inside. We're inside this little porch-type area. The door to the main house is jammed. I think, well, that's enough for us. We should just leave out of here. And then Dave runs his shoulder and checks the door like a dumbass. He opens the door at the cost of messing up his shoulder. We get inside, and the place smells atrociously of rot. I even have to cover my face just to go in. The place isn't even that old, but just looks like it was lost to time. The windows are intact, but the inside is trashed like it's a homeless den. I tell them both that we should just leave because it looks like someone's been, quote, living here, if you could even call it that. I get called a pussy by Dave, and I think, why do I even bother taking these people with me? Kat looks unfazed by this place. We go through the house. We find children's toys, books with torn out pages with illegible scribbles on them. There's a mattress that appears to have some kind of fecal matter or something like that all over it. We go into the main bedroom, and there's symbols carved into the door frame. We open the door, and we find a small deer that's been mutilated and gutted, hanging from the ceiling by its intestines. Kat is emotionless. Dave has done a 180 from Macho Man to a kid who looks like he got scared by a Halloween shop decoration. He starts hyperventilating and freaking out. I have to slap him on the face just to try and get him back to earth. He grabs his girlfriend and we take off out of this house. I figured that some wannabe Satanists are squatting here, but I don't want anything to do with them. So we run out of the house into the darkness. I turn on my flashlight and we book it to the car. We notice that there were more dolls that I didn't see, hung by nooses, some torn in half. We can see that they all have their eyes gouged out. I whisper out loud, "Lord, please save me." Dave notices now and yells at me saying, "Why didn't I say anything before?" I would stop to strangle him if it weren't for the fact that we were practically carrying his girlfriend. Kat is still completely void of emotion, despite our attempts to snap her out of it. Dave trips and almost sends himself head first into a tree, messing up his shoulder all that more. As he dusts himself off, we hear something. Leaves crunching behind us. They're gaining ground, fast. I tell him to hurry up before we get butchered by some Satanist hillbillies. The smell of rot from the house has come back, and it's even worse and getting worse with each passing second. We reach the car. I floor out of there. I see nothing come out of the woods behind us. Dave is in pain, and he has his head in her lap. I'm going 90 down a back road when Kat starts frantically screaming incoherently and is trying to roll out of the car. Dave isn't in much better shape to wrestle her down, but he is putting up his best to get her to calm down and to hold her in place. Kat is now violently hitting and scratching at Dave, trying to rip the door open. Dave is laying on her to prevent her from killing herself by rolling outside of the car when I'm going at this speed. In this commotion, I suddenly have this gut feeling to keep my eyes on the tree line next to the tracks. I'm slowing down to cross. I don't know what I see, but it made me shake in fear, catching a glimpse of it. This thing was there. It was very tall, very thin. It was hunched over, and it was running at a speed that I couldn't believe. The way it ran was completely inhuman. I blanked and almost let go of the wheel before Dave yelled at me to look out at the thing that was now on the road. I snapped out of it, and I almost sent us into a dry riverbed, but I managed to not wreck the car. We sped home in a terrified silence. Kat somehow calmed down. We dropped her off at her parents' house and explained that she had some kind of nervous breakdown. I asked Dave what he saw as we were leaving, and it freaks me out to this day. He started to hold back tears. He said it was only for a couple seconds and the headlights, but he saw every bit of it, from the height and the skinniness. He mentioned the eyes were nothing but black voids. Its ribcage was super exposed, and it looked bare. He stops talking and tells me that he wants to go home. Kat has no memory of what happened, or even the car ride to the trail. The whole night is just deleted from her memory. Dave still has problems with his shoulder. He says that it's a reminder of that day and how he was acting. And since it's been so long since this happened, we don't get together like we used to. Just kind of life gets in the way, you know. But I still have dreams of what if the opposite happened. What if I lost control of the car and rolled down that embankment, and then being trapped out there with that thing. I refuse to go anywhere near that town ever again. So, if you had a favorite one, let me know which one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you'd like to. And as always, also down there is the PayPal and Patreon if you would like to donate or support the channel that way. And of course, there's super thanks here on YouTube. And I will say that I've been to quite a few abandoned little places in the middle of the woods. Kind of happens when there's nothing but woods. But running into something like that is like a legitimate fear of mine. I don't know what I would do if I was driving around and then there's this tall, lanky thing running beside the car. I try not to think about that. But besides that, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, make sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching. Have a good week.